Hello, my name is Matt and welcome to another CI/CD video where we're going to be learning how you can create your own build stage on Azure pipelines so that whenever you push something to your project, it's going to get automatically built. I've tried to keep things very simple because there isn't actually a lot of code to write per se to create the stages, but there is already a good chunk of code that I've added from previous projects. It's basically just a hello world CMake project that defines two different targets. And one of them is a static library called mylib, and the other one is an executable called myprogram. And all of this builds just fine with my CMake presets that I've also defined in this project here. And if you don't know what preset is, it just helps you building your CMake project. So there will be a link to a video up here somewhere. So what is the main takeaway from all of this without rambling on too much? Well, I wanted to show you that I can simply just call my build script with my preset that I want to build with. So in my case is Unix debug. And it will just call CMake, it will configure my project, and it will build it automatically. And this is very important because we're going to be calling the script from the pipeline, so you don't actually have to inline everything in your pipeline and make your YAML file a little bit simpler. But yeah, let's get to it. Now, the first thing you're going to do is once you're logged into your GitHub, do make sure that you go to the marketplace and you search for Azure pipelines, and make sure that you install it and give it permissions to access your GitHub repositories here, because we are going to need it. It does need those permissions for you to be able to create free pipelines on Azure. Make sure that you also subscribe to a free account on Azure Pipelines, and you can go on this website here, dev.azure.com. Once you first log into your Azure account, you're not going to see these projects here, so you're going to have to create a new project for your own pipelines. This is a message from the future. I've been informed that unfortunately Azure has recently blocked new accounts from having free agents when you sign up to Azure DevOps. This is apparently to stop people abusing their free agents and stop them from mining things like cryptocurrencies and using computing power for things that are not really DevOps. So if you do get an error saying that no hosted parallelism has been purchased or granted, you can follow these steps here to get that resolved by just filling up this form here, and I'll leave the link in the description where you can put your name, your email, and your DevOps account here, your organization account. And once you submit it, it will take about 2 days to give you access to the free agent. Okay? Now, if you don't want to wait the 2 days to get the free account there, you can set a self-hosted agent. So if you've got a computer lying around that's running Linux somehow. But yeah, I mean, if you want to follow this tutorial as well, I'll leave a link in the description. And that's it. Let's continue the video. So for example, we're going to create a project that will hold the pipelines for this particular Git repository here that we've got. And this is the repository that holds all the code that I've showed you before. Nothing special there. So you're going to click on new project here, give it a name, and I'm not sure if you can see here, but I just called the CVP Azure Pipelines. I'm going to make it public so everyone can see the pipelines running on this particular project. Obviously, if it's a private project, then you probably want to click on private. And once you create the project, you're going to be taken to the project homepage here, as you can see. So to create a pipeline, you're just going to click on the pipelines here and create a pipeline. You're going to select GitHub if you're using GitHub. Obviously, you can also integrate with things like Bitbucket or GitLab or something like that. And once that's through, you're going to have to select a repository you want to create the pipeline for. In my case, is this one here, CVP Azure Pipelines. Just click on that. And you may have to give it some permissions if it doesn't already have it. And this is where the marketplace thing comes in. If you haven't done that, it's probably going to ask you to, sign in to GitHub and give permissions. So we're just going to create a start a pipeline here, and what this will do is if your repository doesn't have a YAML file already for the pipeline, if it doesn't have an Azure -pipelines YAML file, it just creates one and pushes it to your GitHub repository, as you can see here. And we're gonna go with this for now, but we're gonna modify in a second. You'll see what we're doing. So just save it and run, and voila, you've created the first pipeline for your Git repository here. And it's already running, as I can see, and you can see that it's preparing the job. And it may take a while for a machine to actually be able to run this. Azure is basically selecting a machine that's running somewhere. But yeah, here we go. So we checked out the code. It ran a one-line script saying hello world, and then it finished with a post-checkout job here that gets automatically added for you, which is cool. I mean, this is definitely not something that's very useful for us now. What we want to do is basically to have a build pipeline here, so a build stage for this. So how can we do that? Well, this is actually very easy. Well, first, let me actually, synchronize this GitLab YAML file by pulling my Git repository. Now, the first thing that we're going to change here is the actual triggers. So by default, anytime you push something to main, that will trigger an Azure pipelines, as you can see here. But what we want to do is actually something a bit different, because if you're using the free version of Azure pipelines, you only get, I think, is 1,800 minutes a month. So what we can do to minimize that is basically just trigger whenever you have a pull request onto your main branch here. So let's leave this trigger as it is now, but we're also going to add a PR trigger here. So to do that, you just type in PR and then you're going to trigger it on main. So whenever there's a PR to main, we're going to trigger this whole pipeline. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to look at here is the pull here. So you can see that all of your jobs, all of your stages will sort of automatically or by default run on the Ubuntu latest virtual machine on Azure, which is provided for free, which is fine because it has a lot of tools, including CMake and everything that we need actually for this pipeline here. But if you are doing anything a bit more complex than that, for example, if you include some C++ linting tools or anything like that, you probably want to create your own Docker container just for your pipelines. Luckily for you, I have already created one, and you can use this particular container here, which comes from my Docker Hub, in all of your C++ projects because it includes most of the C++ tools that you actually need. Resources are basically a way on Azure pipelines for you to define, I want to use this particular container, this Docker container here, so you can refer to it in your jobs and actually run some of your jobs on that particular resource. As you can see here, we're actually using an image that I've previously created, which should be okay for this particular tutorial here. Now let's actually, go to the important step, which is the definition of our build stage. So I'm just going to type it all and explain it to you what it actually does in the end. And this is pretty much it. So let's actually begin explaining this. The first thing I did here was to create my build stage. And in fact, I actually think I missed a keyword here. Should be stages there. And then we're allowed to actually define each of the stages. But yeah, I defined my stages. The first one and the only one actually is a stage called build. And you can see here, this is the stage name. And there's a display name, which is actually what shows up on the pipeline. And you see that in a bit. That's called build stage. And then within the stage, we can have one or more jobs. We can have multiple jobs per stage. So as you can see here, we've got jobs. And then the first one, which is the first element in the list of jobs, it's called build Ubuntu x86 64. And it has a display name of Ubuntu 18.04 build, which is the Ubuntu Bionic build that we're doing here, which should actually use the Ubuntu container that we've got here, right? No, it shouldn't because we forgot that. So yeah, let's add that in. We can add a container YAML property here to the job. And in that, you just refer to the name of the container you've added here. So in our case is Ubuntu custom, I believe. And yeah, there may be something with the dashes on the names. I don't know yet. So we'll find out in a second when we try and run this. Following from that, this job actually has a few steps. A step is just a particular task that you're going to be running on the terminal for that particular job. So the first one here, for example, is a bash task. So in other words, it's going to open bash and run all of these commands for me. Set a UO pipe fail. Just make sure that if any of the following commands fail, the whole pipeline is going to fail. And that's why we add this here. And then we call our script here with the Unix release. So in other words, it's going to use the Unix rel CMake preset that we've added before. I'm not going to go too much into detail. You can watch the video on the presets if you want. And finally, and quite importantly, actually, we are also packaging the build files so I can release them as an artifact. So what is an artifact? Well, if you've watched the first video of the series, you know that artifacts are things that you can share between jobs, right? So for example, if you were to add a testing stage later on, you would probably need to access the build files here so you can use ctest on all the executables that you've created, or the test executables that you've created. Following this, we do have another step here, which is to actually publish the pipeline artifact. And I think there should be a capital A here. This task here is an Azure specific task. So you can see it in the documentation if you're interested as well. There are more Azure specific tasks, but this one here just publishes whatever target path you give it to the artifact name here, and you see that on the UI in just a second. So let's push this and see if it actually works on a pipeline. An expected value resource. So I'm just going to fix this issue. It's just a typo. It should have been resources, but I'm going to fast that forward. And again, another issue with the names here. That's one of the annoying things in Azure pipelines. You can't really have dashes. You need to use underscores. So I'm going to fix that and fast forward again. And now when we go back to the UI again, you can see that it is actually running now. So our YAML file has no more typos. Let's click on that and see what it actually does. And perfect. You can see here that it builds just fine. You can see the CMake actual output here. So, everything seems to have built fine. And we can also see that we publish the artifact. So what does that look like Well, an artifact published, once you go back to your pipeline overview, you should have one published artifact here. So if you click on that, you can see that your build tar is actually there, and you can download it by simply just clicking on it, really, like there. Let's see what's in here. Build file, Unix release, source, my program, and here we are. So it did actually compile everything fine. I can see my program, the executable here. And yeah, I mean, that's it. You've got your first automated build pipeline. And I do hope that you've enjoyed this video. We are going to do a lot more of these. I'm trying to keep these videos very, very short because I want to record more of these very frequently. But if you enjoyed it, please make sure to like the video and subscribe, and check out my channel for a lot more content like this. And thank you. Bye bye.